Hello, I'm James Wilson.
And I'm Matthew Rowney.
And welcome to episode 3 of the Who Addicts podcast. Today is going to be a very exciting subject, to say the least. It's either going to be interesting or mark the end of my short-lived time back on the Who Addicts once again. So hopefully we can keep it civil, which no doubt we can. Let's be an example to to fans out there that that differ so hugely on this subject of Chris Chibnall and his era, be two people that are on polar opposite sides of the spectrum on the subject, and still be able to go, you know what, we both have different opinions, but that's fine. That's great, in fact. So
exactly. That's what it's all about, right? That's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's, be an example to those people, and not be one of them. Let's not be consumed by the hate, because that's just what Emperor Palpatine wants.
Exactly. Let the hate flow through you.
You let the hate flow through you.
Flow through.
That's.
I mean, I find that me and you, when we come in on a subject from different opinions, we often always find a middle ground anyway. We always seem to sort of come together into like a middle bit where we're sort of like, right, we're sort of in the same kind of place.
Yeah, it's weird. It's so weird. Even when we're like jigsaw pieces that are to two entirely different jigsaw puzzles.
James is the round piece.
Yeah. I'm the corner piece, the round one. But yeah, like to two entirely different jigsaw pieces, it's like we still find a way of meeting together, and I think that's quite a beautiful thing, I think.
It is.
But yes, so if you haven't worked it out yet, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be discussing the Chris Chibnall era, series 11 through till series 13. Well, I guess the 2022 specials as well. So yeah, where do you want to start from?
Well, that was exactly where do you start with this era?
Where do you start?
What's kind of your like? I guess your brief sort of obviously not overview, but like now that the dust has settled a little bit on the Chris Chibnall era. And I'm saying, by the way, the reason why we're doing this podcast now is because it feels like the dust hasn't just settled, but RTD has gotten the dust pan and has gotten rid of all the dust that has settled. He's binned it, and he's like, right, the ship's not only sailed, the ship has gone. The ship has gone to the other end of the planet. You can't even see it anymore. It's like full on RTD. So before this subject kind of feels dated, we wanted to sort of draw a line under it in one big podcast as opposed to going through each of the series. But now that the dust has not only settled but has been brushed into the dust bin by RTD, looking back on the Chibnall era just generally, because I know in the heat of the moment, we've had, I mean, flipping hell, you laid in the middle of the road when hell bent aired, and wished to be ran over. When the dust settles...
Those were dark times, Matthew, dark times.
Yeah, those were dark times. Now that it's kind of finished, we've seen the regen, it's been wrapped up in a bow of sorts. What's your sort of general look back on the Chibnall era now it's done and over with?
When I first, I guess, considering that people haven't seen my opinion progress throughout the Chibnall era, because I left just as it was starting, I left when Twice Upon a Time came out, so before that came out, so I guess I left just before it ended. So yeah, when that first episode came out, The Woman Who Fell to Earth, I was just so ecstatic for Moffat to be gone, to be honest with you. And
I think we both had a bit of a Moffat hangover, didn't we? We were both we needed something new. Like, let's not get that lost up in the perspective. At the time, people can go back into our reviews and see that we were very much like, we need something new.
Yeah, we need something different. I was sick of the. I was seeing the same typical stuff in all of his writing. When I see some of Moffat's writing in Doctor Who and shows beyond the Doctor Who that he's done, like Sherlock, and even more recently with his more recent series Inside Man, and as much as I think that that's a genius series, and I'd suggest watching it because it's got David Tennant in it.
Yeah, careful.
Yeah, but I was quite restrained there, even though I kind of almost went into a David fit. I still kind of kept control, so that needs to be noted. But yeah, so even with shows like Inside Man and stuff like that, I still when I watch something that Moffat's written, I'm not picturing what's on the screen. I'm picturing Moffat sat on his computer going, "Oh my God, I'm so clever. Oh my God, I am so bloody brilliant." So that's what I'm picturing when I'm watching his stuff, which I shouldn't be picturing. I shouldn't be imagining the writer's ego so much, and so that's what I was getting for a lot of Moffat's run on Who. So I was just basically looking forward to something different, and hopefully a writer that that wasn't so preoccupied with their own hubris so much, and was actually thinking about the show, and was thinking about giving some new ideas, and thinking about the characters first, and the ideas and plots and stuff like that first, rather than thinking how clever they are. And that's what I got with Chibnall. I thought, in the first series, I got to admit it was at least ballsy, for Chibnall to have no former characters or villains in his first series as showrunner, and Jodie's first series as the Doctor. I thought that was quite courageous, because a lot of the time you need old villains to kind of, for people to establish, okay, this is the same character, this is the same person, and this was a much more drastic casting choice than what we'd had ever before. So I felt like that at first, that was even more of a reason to have her first villain be a Cyberman, or to be a Dalek or whatever. So, but for there to be no old villains from her previous gallery of villains at all in her first series, I thought was pretty ballsy. I thought. So series 11, I thought, was off to a good start, but that also led to, I think, it being the most forgettable of the Chibnall era with series 11. So I kind of thought that series 11 was the most forgettable, but was also, like I said, it's got to be said, courageous. For it to have whole new villains throughout the whole series, with not one visit from an old face or anything. And then with series 12, which we'll get more into depth on, because Matthew, I think, especially loves the series 12 finale, I think.
A story arc.
I actually can't wait. This is your laying in front of the road moment.
Laying in front of the train tracks, never mind the road.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, series 12, I felt like was a much more memorable series of Chibnall's era, because we had all sorts of memorable moments that Chibnall managed to keep under wraps. That's one thing you've got to give Chibnall, is that he's a master at keeping secrets, and
that was one of the big benefits he brought to the show. At times, probably too much, because there was droughts where I think we maybe needed something, and it didn't give us anything. So I think, in terms of avoiding spoilers, it did give us some great moments, like Jack returning, the fugitive Doctor. Who the hell seen that coming? But then there were, I think the balance between, hiding spoilers and also revealing enough that warranted the secrecy wasn't quite right. I think, it was great that we had moments that weren't spoilt for us, but I think the secrecy almost went too far, in the sense that, I mean, I'll talk about this more when I obviously discuss the Chibnall era, but I think the the balance was just off for me regarding that. But yeah, continue.
Yeah. But yeah, so Series 12, I felt like, just had a lot more memorable moments, and not just, the nostalgic moments of old characters coming back and stuff. Like, there are so much other stuff that I really quite loved from that episode. One of my favorite episodes of Series 12 is the I can't believe I've just said it's one of my favorite episodes, and
I've got the
blanking on it.
list. I've got the list. What happened?
Forgive me, I am tired, ladies and gentlemen. I've got to be up at 4 a.m. tomorrow, so forgive me for this.
Was
the terror of
Nikola Tesla.
Yes, that was it. I knew it was the Nikola Tesla episode, but I was trying to remember the episode title specifically.
Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror.
That's the one. I didn't know if Night of Terror came first.
No, Night of Terror is Nikola Tesla.
No, I was thinking Nikola Tesla. Anyway, whatever. I'm tired. Leave me alone. But yes, that was one of my favorite episodes. With a fairly forgettable villain and a bit of a Rachnos rip-off. But, I wish they had kind of, I don't know, worked in a line there or something. Like they were, that this was the Rachnos's close cousin, or whatever.
It must have been. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish they'd have worked in that somewhere, because it looked too similar to Arachnos for me to think of anything else. To the point where I can't even remember.
Wasn't it the girl who played Rani in Sarah Jane?
It was, yes. It was the girl who played Rani, which I'm glad she was kicked in makeup and prosthetics for that role, because it still opens up the possibility of, her coming back, if at all possible or needed. And, we don't have to worry about any inconsistencies or anything.
I mean, the Doctor's been how many people? Capaldi. I mean, he was a Roman. He was a guy back in Pompeii. I mean, the Sixth Doctor tried to once kill the Fifth Doctor in the Ark of Infinity. So, I mean, that's Doctor Who, innit?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. There are a ton of inconsistencies with the Doctor itself, and one inconsistency currently going with David twice. But yeah, so that was, a fairly forgettable villain in Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, and so, but that episode I really quite liked, because I loved it when Chibnall would explore historical figures throughout human history. I love that, and I think that's what Sidney Newman obviously had in mind in the very beginning in the show's conception many years ago, nearly 60 years ago, and so I think that's what Chibnall did very well, was incorporated historical figures, and a lot of them people that history has overlooked, people that have had a great impact and are inspirations to human history, but are basically never mentioned. It's like Chibnall went, what, I'm gonna champion the people that probably aren't going to get their own biographical movie. They're not going to get an Oscar. So let's bring these characters to light. So yeah, I liked that Chibnall did that throughout his era. I will say briefly, right before I go on to what I thought of Flux, very briefly, I will just say, as a little tease to come later for when me and Matthew get on to talking about the Timeless Children, the Timeless Child storyline. I don't love it, but I don't think it's the crime against nature and worth imprisoning Chris Chibnall or putting him up for execution. I don't think that's a reason. I don't think it's that hateable of a storyline. But that's all I'll say on that for now. Matthew, your eyes.
Biting my tongue.
Matthew, your eyes are about to pop out of your head. Okay, so be careful. I can almost sense like a cartoon when the eyes would pop out there.
Steam is coming out of my ears. If I didn't have these headphones on, you'd see the steam.
I can see it now. I can literally see it. It's fogging up the screen. But yeah, so Flux. I thought was, I think I mentioned this in the first episode of the podcast. I think I did say that I thought that Flux was great because it was one storyline throughout the whole series, you know, and I thought that was interesting and something that Doctor Who hasn't done for years since the classic era, you know, the one storyline stretching throughout, you know, that, I mean, yes, with Russell, we did get, you know, kind of overarching teasing things like Bad Wolf and Torchwood and Harold Saxon and so forth, you know, little things that would lead to the finale, but nothing that was like outright dominating the whole series, you know, one event dominating the whole series. So, you know, and the last time
we expected, didn't we? This is what we. Yeah. I remember when we did that video. I remember, God, we did the Good, the Bad, and the Moffat. Remember that? And then I think we followed that up with a Chibnall video about Broadchurch, and we did say we wouldn't be surprised if he did a sort of continual series arc. And I'm surprised it took him as long as it did to do it in his final series.
Yeah. And the fact that we probably wouldn't have actually even gotten Flux, the overarching story throughout the whole series, I don't think we would have gotten that if it wasn't for COVID. You know, like I think that he had to throw a lot of the ideas that he had for Series 13 out the window due to COVID, and had to basically work around that. Which, you know, he deserves a round of applause for that as well, for being the man that, you know, could run Doctor Who and write a series of Doctor Who and shoot a series of Doctor Who, you know, around a global pandemic that was dominating and decimating movies and TV shows left, right, and centre. So, you know, the fact that could stay standing, I got to admit, I applaud Chibnall for, you know. I don't think he's been the worst custodian or protector of Doctor Who that we've had. You know,
he did almost walk. Apparently, he almost walked. I don't know how true that was, but
yeah, true. But yeah, so Series 13, I thought Flux, I thought was good. You know, there were some interesting new characters. The one critique I will have of Chibnall's is that a lot of the characters I can't remember because their names are too damn long.
Probably because there's so many of them as well. You know what he's like with big casts.
Yeah,
he's obsessed with them.
Yeah, he has these great big casts and everything, and I can barely. And Chibnall doesn't really give me time to remember anyone's names. So there was of course, the dog creature from Flux, which, you know, had a northern accent, which I thought was bizarrely unique.
Carvanista,
yeah, something like that. Yes. So I thought that was an interesting character. You know, reminded me sort of like of, you know, a character that would have been, I don't know, in Star Trek or in. So it definitely felt like a science fiction series, Flux. You know, it was the most space traveling feeling series that I've seen of Who in a while. So, you know, I enjoyed it for that as well. That character Carvanista helped to, you know, kind of help it feel like a science fiction series with spaceships and battles and all sorts. To see the classic Sontarans back, oh my god! To see the classic design of Sontarans back was just brilliant to see. Oh my god! I mean, I was just so ecstatic when I saw that. I was like, thank God. The tiny potato midgets are gone. You know, I was just so pleased to see them look menacing again, but also to still have Dan Starkey as a Sontaran. You know, he was Strax. He was, you know,
I didn't think there was any coming back from Strax. I honestly, not with the same design. I think they had to change them back to what they used to look like to make them feel like Sontarans. I think the modern Who Series 4 ones were more more known for being like Strax, who was obviously a complete comedic character.
Yeah.
So I think they had to revert their design to make them any kind of menacing. But yeah, we will get into War of the Centaurans when we talk about Flux in more detail. But it was one of my more favoured episodes of that series.
Yeah.
I will say that.
Absolutely, and so yeah, it was great to see Dan Starkey back in that part, and to be playing a classic design Sontaran, and to just see start the series off with such a huge note. The whole universe is destroyed. I mean, that's hell of a hook for the first episode, And I know that you have your, you think that Flux. I know we'll get more onto that. That you think Flux is kind of weaker than Series 11. I think you'd said something along the lines.
Well, it keeps changing, so I'll probably. I'm still not sure. I'm still thinking on that.
Yeah,
I'll come to a decision in a few minutes.
You can say your decision once. I just quickly say about the more recent specials. Eva the Daleks, I thought was brilliant. I loved that episode. I'd always wanted a time loop episode, and I finally got it, and it was great. They really worked on that, kind of cliched premise, that sort of like the Groundhog Day premise that everyone knows. So I feel like that Chibnall did that beautifully. Legend of the Sea Devils was terrible. I hated it. Moving on. I'd waited my whole childhood and half my adult life to half my early adult life for the Sea Devils to come back. Ever since I saw the episode with John Pertwee, the Sea Devils. I love that story, and it's one of my favourite Doctor Who classic stories. And
my heart goes out to you because I know exactly how long you waited for that. And Jesus Christ, I'm not going to even. I think people know it was a shocker. It was a shocker.
It was the one episode. Like I have, even the episodes that I haven't liked of Chibnall's era, I've still went back and rewatched it. I've still been a good sport and rewatched it. But the first episode was so, the first watch was already so terrible for me. I was like, you know what? This is one time where I'm going to give myself a pass. I am not rewatching that shit. No way in hell. So no, really didn't like that one. And then, of course, no need to go too much in depth with Power of the Doctor. We know my opinion, our opinion on that. So yeah, Chibnall's era as a whole has had its ups and downs, but ultimately, I think it still felt like Doctor Who to me. It still felt like the show that I grew up loving. Despite other people's differing opinions. I've thought that it's been, on the most side, a very, very watchable and enjoyable series.
Interesting. Well, I think the perception people have with me is that I hate the Chibnall era. And I don't hate the Chibnall era, but I feel complete. Well, obviously, Power of the Doctor was a fantastic send-off. And we were both delighted to see that it ended on such a great note. We both thoroughly enjoyed that episode. Had its flaws, yes, but overall it was fun. But I felt complete apathy. And I think that's the worst thing to feel. I think it doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether you were creating anything. I feel like you create something to get a reaction from the viewer, from your client, from whoever you're making something for. And I would rather feel unbelievably positive towards something or feel not negative, but, I have loads of criticisms and ways to improve it. But when you feel complete apathy towards something, that is the worst. When Doctor Who started to come on every week and I started to not care, that's when I thought, crap, there's a problem here. And that's unfortunately how it went. I feel like for me, it just never grabbed me as a viewer. It never hooked me. I think I agree with you. I think with Series 11, I completely respect and admire Chibnall for the direction he took it in. Very much like what Moffat did in Series 5, a very different approach with the story arc, the fantasy sort of feel that the Series 5 had. And I applaud Chibnall for the direction he took in terms of, no villains, no notable villains. Not many villains at all, actually, when you think about it. There was a lot of human villains and, a deeper meaning to what a villain was. Obviously, Arachnids in the UK had spiders, but the real villain, I guess you could look at was what was his name? The
the Trump archetype.
Yeah.
It was basically, that character was basically a Chibnall's response to Trump. To
exactly.
Trumpism, basically, yeah.
Rosa, of course, had racism, more of the villain than Krasko, I guess. There wasn't really a villain in the Ghost Monument, a proper villain. It was more about finding the TARDIS. You could continue on, Demons of the Punjab. Them creatures weren't even villains in the end. It was Prem's brother. So his approach was different and refreshing. But I just feel like it just lacked something. And I don't know what it was. Don't get me wrong. I think Rosa, for me, is the best historical episode of the modern era. I adore Rosa. I think it is incredible. I think Demons of the Punjab, again, like what you were saying about Chibnall and historical episodes, that's probably one of the biggest strengths of his era. Demons of the Punjab was probably my second favourite episode of that series. I even thought Kablam was good, but again, the villain wasn't as much the Kablam men. It was Charlie, who was a worker, and it was all because of, his thoughts on the company and automation. And again, it's another message into the real world. And I'm not going into Doctor Who being political and that stuff because it's always been political. But anyway, the lack of a threat, I think, and the lack of a real arc, I just struggled with it. And I think one of the big hooks for me is the Doctor. And I couldn't get on board with Jodie's Doctor. I felt like she really needed that Doctor moment, that 11th Doctor on the roof, that 10th Doctor with the Sycorax, that 9th Doctor with the Dalek, that moment where I went, there we go, that's it, I'm on board with this character. And it just never happened. It felt like Series 11 kept going up to like second, third gear, then it would stall and it would stagger and it would struggle. And she never really got that moment. The only notable villain she had was Tim Shaw, who was average. So I feel like Series 11 was just meh. It just sort of plodded along with okay moments, but it was very it just flatlined. And as it went on, obviously you're hoping as time goes on, it will build to something. You will eventually sort of, get on board. And I just never did. And the longer you go without getting on board with something, the more your interest sort of wanes. So I sort of got to the end of Series 11 and I was a bit like, that's done nothing for me. But I'm still there. Series 12 will hopefully do something. And it's weird because the difference in approach was really weird because Chibnall went from being like, right, this is completely different, this is completely refreshed, no notable villains. Series 11 is going to be the ultimate jumping on point, which it was. I think it was an accessible jumping on point. And then Series 12 was bonkers. You started off with, boom, the Master's back. We just had the Daleks in Resolution. Then next thing you've got a new Doctor, the fugitive stuff, and it's like, what the hell? And it was very much like, instead of a steady sort of series that did nothing like Series 11, Series 12 was up, then it was down, like Spyfall. Flippin' loved it. Incredible. Orphan 55, shit. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, I thought it was okay. Fugitive, I loved, but then Praxeus was crap. Can You Hear Me, I thought was bang average. And it was just very, very up, very down. I thought The Haunting of Villa Diodati was incredible. Essentially, the Cybermen was okay, but then the Timeless Children sort of just messed it all up. And harkening back to Series 11, the Battle of Rice and Beans, as I call it, the Battle of Ranskow, of course. No excuse for a finale at all. It just epitomised the whole era. So it was like flatland, then it went mental. And then Flux for me was just... It was a mess, mate. It was a mess. I think I loved War of the Centaurans. I love Village of the Angels. I think 2 standalone episodes were fantastic. But then at the same time, I thought, again, like Series 12, they were either up here or they were down here. I thought the opener was dull. Once Upon a Time, I couldn't watch. It's probably one of the most unwatchable episodes I've ever seen. And then towards the end of it, I just had absolutely no idea what was going on. I thought it was a really convoluted, crumpled up, rushed mess towards the end. I just feel like there was no flow to the Chibnall era. It never felt like it was building to anything. It just sort of went up and down, and it was all over the place. It didn't quite know where it wanted to be, what it was trying to be. And yeah, he went from starting off with like no notable villains. This is the identity of my new era. And then towards the end, you saw it with Power of the Doctor. Master, Sidemen, Daleks, everything's happening. We've got doctors all over the place, and suddenly everything was going on. So yeah, I think as it went on, I think once I fell off that train, I couldn't get back on. Once I fell off the bike, I couldn't get back on again. And it got to a point where I was just so disengaged and felt so little towards the show. Jodie's Doctor never really developed or went anywhere for me. The companions, which I'm sure we'll get onto in more detail, didn't really go anywhere from square one. And I felt like there was no progression or no direction or nothing for me to hook onto or get on board with. I just lost real interest, and I never really got it back until the very end. So it's not an era that I just absolutely flat out, despise or anything. I recognise there was plenty of real highs, but also a lot of lows, and a lot of apathy, which for me is the worst emotion. To feel nothing towards something, especially with Doctor Who, was awful. So that's me in a nutshell. Kind of all over the place. In terms of which series I prefer, I still don't know. That's my honest answer. I still don't quite know what I prefer because each series was so different. So yeah. That's me.
Yeah, I do have a question for you. You've of course been you were of course at the heart of, well, not so much the heart, but really kind of you were in, kind of like the toxic fan hate, the blender that was, if I were to attach a kitchen appliance to this fandom, I think blender would probably be the right one.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like all sorts of fans mixed together in a very disgusting looking smoothie. Like it was just kind of like, so you were there while I wasn't. I was kind of I wasn't on any Doctor Who pages or anything. I wasn't looking in comment sections.
It's probably a good thing that you weren't.
Yeah, probably.
Probably a good thing that you weren't. It's probably saved you a lot of.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I am very thankful. I mean, as much as I missed this channel, and to some degree, I missed Matthew, and I also, a little bit, and I also, and I obviously missed all of you guys watching or listening as well. At the same time, I was glad that I was gone because, I didn't want to be a part of that. I didn't want to be a part of that toxicity, that that kind of, because I realized that when you're a part of a fandom, when you're part of a fan base, a group, which is just basically a way of saying, like, fandom creates such a a toxic environment because all you are is just basically a large group of people that enjoy the same thing, and that's normally a beautiful thing, but fan bases have found a way to sort of weaponize that and make it an absolute nightmare to watch and enjoy sometimes. So I'm glad I wasn't a part of that, because I think Doctor Who fans, Star Wars fans as well, over the years have very much found a way to weaponize their fan base and try and find a way of it's not about loving your show anymore. It's not about loving your movie franchise that you love. It's not about loving it anymore. It's about dominating it. It's about having influence over the show or movies itself. That's what the internet has given us. And yeah, sure, it's helped us to, it's helped to inform movie studios and TV executives over, what what is good writing, what is a good, person to cast, what is, like all these, ways in which people, kind of, it's found a way to, the internet has informed the people making these shows and movies, sort of like they can talk to the fans personally. So there is a positive to it, and
I think Phasmin came from that as well. I'm sure Phasmin came from the fandom. I don't think it was ever initially.
I do think as well that was very much kind of a stemmed from the fans as well. But the question I have for you is that do you think the hate towards Chibnall is at all justified? Like, do you think people being like raising pitchforks and torches at him, do you think like that it's at all justified?
I don't think the hate's justified. I think it's not. I don't think it's hate for Chibnall. I think it's hate for the people who support Chibnall, because the fandom has gone in a strange way that during the Chibnall era. I don't know quite why. I mean, the argument on Chibnall pushing political messaging in his writing, I mean, it's always been there in Doctor Who. It's nothing new. I think he probably has pushed it more so, and maybe because of social media's influence and so many more people talking about it, it makes it even more, prevalent that it was there. But there's something about Chibnall's Who that is so divisive, and I don't know. I'll never quite know what that is. I mean, Chibnall's Who's always been heavy on representation, and it's done a great job at representation, with obviously a female doctor. It highlighted mental health, it's highlighted Ryan's disability, it's highlighted loads of issues. And I don't know why, but it's kind of put this umbrella on the show, and this is the only way I can sum up the fandom. It got to a point where you couldn't criticize there was no grey area in between. The grey area in between opinions had vanished, and it was either black or white. And a lot of fans took opinions way too personally, and it was because if you didn't like the 13th Doctor, you were sexist. Even if your opinions were valid and nothing to do with her gender, you would get branded as sexist by people who were so in love with her Doctor, they would not have any criticism towards it. They would jump to using a political term against you. It would be the same for people who didn't like Phasmin. They would be homophobic, etc. And I think the fandom got so divided. There was this umbrella which you couldn't hate. There's supporting the show for what it represents and criticizing the show for what it represents, and then there's supporting the show for its writing, its Doctor, its opinions, its quality, or criticizing it for its quality and its writing. And I think it got lost in the shuffle. People couldn't differentiate the difference between not liking an episode because it wasn't written well, or not liking the 13th Doctor because she was annoying, or not liking it because it represented this message and because the 13th Doctor's a woman and you're sexist. It sort of got amalgamated into one, and there was this umbrella that, they were both the same thing, and people couldn't differentiate the difference between disliking it for its quality or disliking it for what it represents. And I think that's where the lines got blurred, and it split the fandom in two, and it was really sort of, you're either on one side or the other. You either love the era or you don't. When you could be in the middle, you could dislike an episode one week and love an episode the next week. And I think it got to a point where people were so split on one side or the other. People who didn't like, it got so toxic. People who didn't like an episode hated Chris Chibnall for what he's done and the Doctor he's cast and the writing he's doing and the messages, whereas people from the other side would defend him to the hilt no matter what he written, even if the episode was bad. So I don't think the hate towards him is justified. I don't think the hate towards Jodie is justified. I don't think there's any hate that's justified between anyone. To be fair, the bottom line is there's no hate that's justified for anything in the fandom. People hate some fans and channels for loving Doctor Who and loving Jodie. That's not justified either. Just as much as the hate for someone not liking her Doctor because they don't think she's a good Doctor. That's the hate for them is not justified either. If they don't like her because she's a woman, that's justified. If they don't like an episode because of what it's trying to represent, that's justified. The lines have very much been blurred, and you're either on one side or the other, it seems. And I think that's where the hatred comes from. I don't think it should be justified. I think that it's just divided into two, and it's really sad to see. And there's this perception of channels who even remotely criticised the era that they're suddenly on that side. You know, like we once didn't like an episode, we get pushed on that side when we're not. We're not on either side. We're in the middle. We're just giving an opinion, and I think that's sadly where the perception has completely been blurred. So I don't think hatred's justified on any side. But my questions, this is my question to you. I mean, from someone who's been sort of from the outside looking in, I mean, we've been in the midst of it. I don't even know what the fandom looks like from an outside perspective. I mean, for me, being in it, it's an absolute mess. And I hope under Russell it can be repaired. The early signs aren't great because, you know, people who, will defiantly defend Jodie and Chibnall's era, a lot of them are now taking an instant hatred and dislike towards Russell's era, which is flipping their previous opinion on its head and being quite hypocritical. You know, that shouldn't be the way. So hopefully it gets better. But what's been your perception on it from the outside looking in?
With me, I think I was just trying to. Just enjoy the show. That's literally all I was trying to do, and that was the one positive, regardless of where this new era with Chibnall went. Whether I lived in an alternate timeline where, you know, his era was great and he made all the right writing decisions, and Jodie was fantastic and brilliant, and she acted brilliantly with it, and, you know, and stuff. So like either that or, you know, the route that we did go down. Either way, I was just trying to be a fan again. That was the one positive that I thought I could get out of leaving the channel.
That's why I stopped in 2020. I wanted to experience the show as just a fan, because the pressure of having an opinion and feeling like you have to give out a public opinion, knowing that people are going to jump on it regardless and put you on one side or the other, it was just too much pressure. You want to just enjoy it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You got it bang on there. I mean, I was just basically trying to, you know, not listen so much to the critique side of my opinion on the episode. You know, I was trying to leave that behind. You know, like I was trying to. My attitude right after I'd left in the first episode after leaving, which was Twice Upon a Time, which was hard to shake. Weirdly, like I obviously
you can't not look at it and think, oh, that was good.
For like 4 years, I had, so naturally for 4 years I'd been criticizing Doctor Who episodes, and that was, you know, I wouldn't say a job, you know, because you get paid for jobs, but you know, like I guess. Is there anything in between a job and a hobby that's like
a job?
Because I feel like a hobby with doing this channel is kind of like underselling it, but it's not quite a job at the same time.
Call it a jobby.
Yeah, a jobby. That sounds wrong, but
it does. It sounds like some strange.
It does sound very strange. I'm never saying the word jobby ever again. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, so but after watching Twice Upon a Time, my immediate thought was, oh my God, I'm being too critical of this episode. I'm being really nitpicky with it, and I'm being, you know, and I was like, oh my God, is this what doing this channel has done to me? You know, but I think that was more a case of, you know, when you're reviewing something, it's a review, so you've got to be kind of critical of it, but you know, also kind of, you know, you kind of want to see both sides of the coin a little bit. So, you know, I think that's basically what I was trying to do. I mean, there were a lot of things about Twice Upon a Time that I didn't like, but also, you know, that I did like. You know, so I think when I was first seeing that, I think I was, and then going forward after Twice Upon a Time into the new era, the then new era, I was just basically like, okay, I need to going forward be less critical of the episodes and just learn to be a fan again. you know, what I was pre the Who Addicts, pre
Yeah.
2013. You know, like what the show was to me back then. You know, where I could, you know, talk to people about it freely, and you know, just basically have the same thing that I do with you now, but you know, without the internet involved, without a screen in between us, you know, and
Yeah.
stuff. So, you know, I think that was basically what I was trying to do with when I left, you know.
Yeah. So what would I mean? I'm guessing it was. I mean, I just hearing you talk. I mean, I like I said, I tried this in 2020, but I think I was already so disinterested I couldn't really get back in. And there is a degree of like because you have a channel, it makes it gives you a reason to watch. It gives you a reason to tune in. But I think when you're not enjoying something, it makes it's weird. It gives you a reason to do it, but if you're not invested, it's hard because then you're like, I've got to review this episode, and I wasn't really that, and I don't want to be negative again, but I didn't enjoy it, and you know that there was a degree of me which, you know, looking back, wishes I could have experienced this era as just a fan, you know, just sitting there every week, not having to go on Twitter to see what other people thought, because a big part of I think why this era was so difficult was because of the fandom. I think the fandom made this era so much more difficult to enjoy because, you know, even if you loved an episode, you couldn't. You felt weird going online and saying why you loved it because then you'd get the people from the other side who would jump on you for liking it. But if you didn't like it, you didn't say anything about that as well because you know the toxicity was there and you'd get attacked for critiquing it as well. So I envy you in the sense that you got to sit back and just enjoy it for what it was. As a fan, you didn't have to look at it in a critical eye. And I think maybe I would have enjoyed it more if it wasn't for the channel, because a big part of why I struggled was because of the backlash we got, because of how depressing it was going on Twitter and how anxious it made you, even putting your opinion out there publicly. You know, a big part of this channel with the following we have is that we've got to put our opinion out there publicly. You know, it's just the way it is, and it made it hard to do that, and it made me anxious to do that. It made me dread reviewing it, and every time I watched it, I thought, "Oh God, I didn't like that," but I don't want to have to say I didn't like it because you know. And so I envy you, and I think you know a big reason as to why I might not like this era might not be because of what it was. It might have been because of the fandom and what came with it. I may have been in the same position as you if I wasn't here. So you've done the right thing. Well done.
Yeah,
Jump back on at the perfect time.
I don't want the subscribers to think that we don't, you know, love every single last one of you. We do, you know, and I didn't. You know, I feel like a parent that left and trying to tell the kids, you know, not to, that we still love you. That this is not about you. We still love you very much. I feel like that's what's going on here. But no, I did leave because of you know my life had just taken a very seismic change in you know going to uni, so that was the main big reason. But also I felt like at the same time, and I didn't realize it till I'd left. I had to leave in order for me to realize just how much the channel had affected how I watched the show.
I bet you felt a relief leave your shoulders. I bet you felt like a weight.
Yeah, I think there was a relief that you know I didn't have to put my opinion on of every episode every week. In fact, I didn't have to tell my opinion to anybody. You know, I didn't have to. You know,
until now.
Yeah, till now. Now I'm back, and I've got to. You know, that's another thing as well, is that I've gotten used to it now. I've gotten used to not putting my opinion up. But sometimes I even forget, like I was so, you know, kind of jumping up and down with joy with Power of the Doctor that I was like, oh crap, I'm on a channel again now. I've got to put my opinion of this, you know. So that was kind of a crazy thing. So, you know, it was weird, but you know, it was weird, yeah, I think.
Well, should we get into a little bit more detail in terms of the era itself? I mean,
Yeah.
so Series 11, I think, yeah. Where do you stand with Series 11 compared to the three then? Because I I cannot rank these three, but I see it as a very, I don't know. It felt like I say the best way for me to describe it is it didn't get out of gear. I feel like when we'll delve into the characters as well, the 13th Doctor, I think, like I said, the lack of a villain, the lack of a test. I don't feel like there's a true test. You know, I think Graham lost Grace in the opener, and I thought the opener was great. It just, you know, we saw Yaz was a police officer and Ryan, you know, had dyspraxia and stuff, but I feel like it just never went anywhere. And I think that the finale epitomised Series 11 in the sense that it had no climax at all. The finale was just as flat, just as uneventful. No real stakes, no real lives on the line. It didn't feel like there was much going on, and I think that summed up Series 11. I think there were. It was trying to be too accessible. It was trying to be too easy, too laid back, too safe, and I think that showed in the end because, like you say, it wasn't very memorable. So, what did you think of the 13th Doctor in her debut series? Did you think, like me, she maybe didn't get enough to do enough of a test, that Doctor moment that we say? Because come the end of Series 11 for me, she was no more the Doctor to me than she was when she started.
Yeah, I mean, I think Series 11. I think my opinion on it kind of lies in when we were talking when I was trying to rewatch it, and I think trying is rather telling of what my opinion of that series is that it was boring as sin. You know, for the most part, you know, I could not get into it. I could not. You know,
The
there
lack
was
of a
nothing.
story arc. You need something to pull
Yeah,
you in, don't you? You need something to
yeah,
really hook you in.
absolutely. You need something to be able to hook you. You know, and there was nothing to hook me in Series 11. You know, there was nothing there. You know, for me for. In fact, I even remember really when I had gotten into into Series 11 the first time around. You know, back when it first aired, and yeah, okay, I was at uni, and I guess you could argue that I had other commitments, meaning I had a friendship circle. I was socializing. I had to, I was going out drinking. So that happens at uni. So
And
I guess you could
and the
say
rest.
and the rest, indeed. So most of the time on Sunday nights when it was coming out, those were kind of the perfect nights because I was hungover in bed. So it was kind of perfect for a lot of people found it quite discombobulating for the day change from Saturdays to Sundays. A lot of people found that to be quite.
You were welcoming in it.
Yeah, I was welcoming it because I was like, because Saturday nights were no good for me anymore. I had to go out. I was going out drinking, going to karaoke bars and all that stuff. So I was, so Sunday nights worked out a lot better for me from a uni lifestyle standpoint. But I remember I still, when I would watch an episode, I would still be like, I'll catch it later. So it wasn't as much of a like, oh, I need to watch this.
Do you remember when an episode of Doctor Who would air and me and you would absolutely be infuriated if we were even a minute behind the rest of the country?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
do you remember? We used to hate that. It was one of the Whereas it got to a point where I was happy to watch this on iPlayer, and I think that was the first time where I was like,
"Yeah,
this isn't right."
Yeah,
We used to.
I know. I noticed that myself when Series 11 first came out. When I started to notice that, I'll catch it later, was when I think it was. I believe it was Orphan whatever. I think
Orphan 55.
Yeah, Orphan 55. I think I started to realize that this was the first time with a series of Doctor Who I truly wasn't interested in the show, and a part of me didn't want to believe it. a part of me was denying it. Like, no, still a Doctor Who fan, still a Doctor Who fan, still an avid fan of the show. And, but I couldn't deny it any longer because I kept putting off watching Orphan 55. I think I finally got round to watching the whole episode right the way through, like about the night of the next episode coming out. Like, I was like, okay, there might be something about this week's episode being talked about in Orphan 55, so I'd better watch it. So I watched it and I was like, okay. I literally gained nothing from having watched, from when I hadn't watched it. But that was when I sort of realized, oh my God, Series 11 is a bit crap, So I was like, please, Chibnall, please pick it up next series. So yeah, it got to a point where I didn't even actually notice that a series had ended.
Like, are you getting Orphan 55 mixed up with the Saranga conundrum? Because I think Orphan 55 was series 12.
Was it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think
the Saranga conundrum for me was. I think summed the whole thing up. It was the one with the pating.
Yeah, no, that was it. The little tiny thing that looks like it would be. It looks like it would be in every plush toy store known to man. That was
it's
the
only episode on rewatch.
I couldn't finish everything.
I couldn't finish it on rewatch. Couldn't finish it.
No.
That sort of summed it up. I think the finale sort of sums up. I mean, where were you when it come to 13 and the companions by the end of the series?
The thing is with me is that I as long as I like the characters, then I can forgive everything else. I can forgive boring plot and everything. So for me, at least, the Doctor and the companions and this TARDIS team, I was thoroughly enjoying. I was thoroughly enjoying this approach of, the Doctor that there wasn't this hierarchy in the TARDIS, that there was the Doctor. She is the leader. She is, she is the guy or girl to go to when, shit hits the fan, and knows everything. I liked this idea that everyone was equal in the TARDIS, like it was kind of like an equal structure between, the Doctor, Yaz, and Ryan and Graham. So I was enjoying that, and so I was enjoying the 13th Doctor. To be honest with you, I was enjoying her sort of bubbly optimism with everything, but also, like with other Doctors, just didn't quite fit in. Would sometimes say the wrong thing, and would kind of look back at, it's like Yaz was like her translator and was like, was I being weird again? Or, was that the wrong thing to say? Or, was I being stupid again? And stuff like that. Like, I liked that. I think that was a great dynamic that, the Doctor knows everything about everything except closeness and human connection, and stuff. That is something that the Doctor has always been incapable of. I was listening to a podcast on TikTok a bit ago, which was when in the episode when the Fifth Doctor is dropping Tegan off on Earth and just literally barely says goodbye, because as we all know, the Doctor hates goodbyes. So I think the 13th, I think Geordie definitely leaned on that side of the Doctor a lot more. Someone that is so excited by strange and interesting things throughout the universe, but is absolutely scared shitless and does not know what the hell to do when it comes to, people hugging or, people, trying to, relate to each other. And it's so alien to her and quite frightening for her. So I was quite liking that, in that, the relationship that she had with the companion seemed to be, that, okay, the only way I can keep my humanity, I've been going to Earth so long, I feel like I am sort of like a surrogate human in a way, So I felt like that was the first time I felt like all the doctor's trying to connect with humanity through his companions, and so that's genuinely how I felt about that Doctor and that TARDIS team. I felt like it was an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I think the more I'm thinking about it, the more I feel like the ingredients were all there, but they weren't in the right order. Because for me, I think the biggest issue I had with 13, and the first time I ever saw her, is the first time I looked at her and thought, that's the Doctor, wasn't until the end of Spyfall Part 2 in Series 12, which was like the end of the second episode. And I think there's a couple of reasons. I think at the end of Series 11, her character was sort of so one-dimensional. All the characteristics you've just mentioned are right. That's exactly how she was. But because she'd not been tested, because she'd never gone up against a really, really tough villain, and I don't count Tim Shaw as a villain. I mean, they defeated him by shooting him in the leg and chucking him in a chamber. That was it. The lack of her Doctor being tested, we didn't see her tested, we didn't see any different sides to her character. Like in the Beast Below, we saw the 11th Doctor flip out at Amy in only his second episode. We saw the 9th Doctor flip out in Dalek. We never saw her different side to her Doctor. She was so one-dimensional. I think she became really predictable, and I think the TARDIS team were as well. They never really had to get put through the ringer in Series 11. They never really had to experience anything that tested their characters, where we saw different sides to them. And I feel like I said earlier, it was very one note the whole series, and it wasn't until Series 12 where suddenly the Doctor was split up from the companions, and they were wanted, and they had to in Spyfall they had to they had to go on missions themselves, and 13 was suddenly being tested by the Master, who for me brought out the best in her. And I also loved 13 a lot more when she was just with Yaz. I think even Dan was a useless third wheel who didn't need to be there. For me, the best of 13 come when she wasn't surrounded by so many characters, because I feel like there was, especially in Series 11, there was so many of them. The TARDIS team was way too big, and because there was so many of them, and none of them were really doing anything that special, they all just sort of didn't stand out amongst one another. Yes, there wasn't a hierarchy, but I don't think any of them particularly stood out or did anything special, and it made their characters very dull. So I kind of look back and wish that it started off with Series 12, with 13 going up against the Master, the companions getting flung in the deep end, having all this stuff to do, seeing different sides to her Doctor, their characters. Maybe her having a smaller TARDIS team like in Flux, where we could get to see more of who 13 actually is. And then maybe Series 11 could have come later once we had these established characters. We knew what they were about. I feel like the ingredients were all there, just in the wrong order. And in Series 11 especially, they were just not given enough time to shine. And I think that's why it got to that point where I was so disinterested. They just never got the chance to do anything. And there were no notable villains amongst any of it. So, Series 11 was just lacked something that the other series had. I wish they'd have come first.
Yeah, I think you might have a point there, but I mean, there's also a case to be made about like if it was the other way around, Jodie's last series would have been known as like a total bore, and
maybe they mixed the episodes up. I don't know. I just feel like the way the characters developed and stuff, it just didn't feel quite.
I can understand your thought there, and going into Series 12, because we are an hour in here, so and we've only just finished talking about Series 11. Wow, I love being back on this channel. Just the fact that we can really make a mountain out of a molehill, us two.
A very large skyscraper-sized molehill.
Indeed, yes. But yeah, so going into Series 12, of course, we've talked about these big, memorable moments. The Sasha Dwayne's Master. But I recently talked about Master reveals, and I put him quite high up. And
he's the highlight of the era for me.
Yeah,
the best thing come out of this era.
Oh, easy. And then obviously we had Fugitive Doctor coming into it, blowing our minds, and of course, Captain Jack returning as well, having such a huge shock return with absolutely no pre-warning at all. And then obviously, the much divisive Timeless Children. So yeah. Don't worry, Matthew. We're going on to that very, very soon. I'm going to let you let a rip on this one. But I do want to briefly ask, is that all Series 12 is going to be known for? Because what makes a good series? Is it a good series if every single episode is good? Every single one, not one can fall by the wayside, Because it seems to me that the only thing you and me have noticing about the series are the beginning, the middle, and the end. How much it was a strong start with the beginning, with Spyfall parts 1 and 2, and then in the middle with Fugitive of the Jadoon, and then the end with the Timeless Children. I mean, say what you will, you might say that that's, not a good thing, but it's memorable at least. You're going to remember it as much as you'd like to not remember it, Matthew. But do you think that makes it a failure of a series for Series 12 if, the only things that we're talking about are just small intervals, none of the rest of the series really mattered?
Yeah, it's weird because I feel like Series 12 is a series of moments. I guess it depends on what you want to get out of a series because, like I said, I mean, I've just been, saying how Series 11 was boring and uneventful and it didn't give the Doctor moments to shine. It didn't give the companion stuff to do. Series 12 did the complete opposite to that. So, Spyfall I loved. I thought Spyfall was fantastic. The Master reveal, incredible. And some of the scenes that the Doctor and the Master had, I mean, 13 was just a brand new character when with the Master, with Sasha. I mean, them two, the chemistry was incredible. And I thought Fugitive was a fantastic episode. Yeah, maybe, a lot of that's because of the shock and the surprise and the reveal and Jack being back. Nostalgia in there and stuff. And obviously the Timeless Children's always going to be memorable for, regardless of what you think of it. So I just don't know. I mean, it depends on what you want from a series. I mean, what I will say about Chibnall is I think one of his strengths is what he does with the Master, the Daleks, and the Cybermen. I think when it comes to writing them old established villains, he's probably head and shoulders. He's up there. I mean, he's written some incredible Cybermen, Dalek. I mean, you look at Resolution or Revolution, either of the Daleks. I think the Master, as we saw with Sasha, was written brilliantly. It was fantastic.
Oh yeah.
But when it comes to him creating his own villains, he's got nothing on Moffat. When you look at the Weeping Angels or the Silence, so I feel like Chibnall was good at taking other people's, I don't want to say other people's ideas because that sounds harsh, but, big moments, taking, the character of the Doctor with the Fugitive, taking the Master, and, they were the highlights, whereas the stuff in between where he couldn't lean on any of that. He couldn't lean on these big surprises, these big villains, these big reveals, these big moments. Orphan 55, Praxius, Can You Hear Me? Very unmemorable, and you could literally probably watch this series and skip maybe half of it, and I think that's not a good thing. But if you put both series in front of me, which one would I choose to watch? Which one would I reach for? I'd reach for Series 12.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't reach for Orphan 55. I would reach for Spyfall. I would then reach for Fugitive.
Yeah.
I would then probably reach for Haunting. I would skip Timeless Children. I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose it is better. I suppose it is better to have a series of moments rather than a series of no moments.
Yeah.
So maybe that is better.
I talked about apathy at the start. I would rather something make me feel something. Series 11 makes me feel absolutely nothing, barring Rosa and maybe Demons. I feel absolutely zero towards that series. Whereas Series 12 makes me feel both amazing and infuriated at times. So I guess so I don't completely contradict
myself. It's a very complicated relationship you have with Chibnall, isn't it?
It is. So it's I don't contradict what I said at the start. If I prefer to feel something than nothing at all, I'd have to go with Series 12.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we, briefly go on in more in depth with Flux and then wrap it up, I think it's time we let you sort of talk about the timeless. I don't really say the name anymore because I'm scared that if I say it 3 times, Matthew will turn into Beetlejuice and kill everyone. But yes, I guess I will briefly say my 2 cents on
give your side first. Give your side first, because I want to hear why you.
Yeah, because you've given your opinion in a review when the episode first aired. I think you've discussed it twice at this point in 2 videos. I think
many times.
Many times. So I'll just tell my opinion briefly. Basically, I don't love the storyline. I don't think, that's such a genius idea. But I don't think it's the worst thing, that's ever happened in Doctor Who history. I think that the idea of the Doctor not being from Gallifrey and, in fact, being from somewhere else entirely is quite an interesting idea. The fact that the Doctor is this galactic orphan. That no one told her that she was adopted in the first place. I think that's a great idea and kind of provides kind of like an identity crisis for the Doctor, because the Doctor always needs to have something interesting happen to it, because the Doctor's very difficult to make interesting sometimes. It's difficult to give the Doctor real challenges, when the Doctor keeps defeating everyone, and so I think it's always important to give that character something that is psychologically scarring, for that character, like the Time War, and like with Trenzalore, and stuff. Like, it's important to give the Doctor real psychological stakes, because physical stakes are never going to work, because he or she is always going to keep beating them. So it's more important to keep the Doctor mentally on his toes than anything else. So I think that is what I got out of the Timeless Children story arc, is that that Doctor discovering that her home planet wasn't her planet. I thought was interesting. And you'll be surprised to hear this, Matthew, because I've been defending this idea to death sometimes, but I think I'm half and half with the Timeless Children. I am not opposed to the idea of the Doctor suddenly being revealed that she's not from Gallifrey. I'm fine with that idea. The idea of the Doctor creating the Time Lords and being the genetic template for the whole species of Time Lords, that not so much on board with.
Right. So okay.
I guess we could say I'm half and half with this storyline.
You've changed a bit compared to.
I have. Yes. I'm actually a clone.
Oh God, no! Don't make me think there's 2 of you. Christ.
No,
that would be worse than the Timeless Child. 2 of you, dear me.
I know. It's why I shaved my head.
Oh yes, you've not revealed that to the whole.
Yes,
he's actually skinhead.
There you go. There you go. See, clones can't grow hair. There you go. No. There's a little bit of a thing for you. But anyway, but yes, I have changed it quite a bit, because I've watched some video essays on the the reason why it was so terrible, the idea of that and everything.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, there is a lot of those videos, but I think a lot of them had so many, different, had so many good points that I could not really deny them anymore. But I wasn't seeing any, decent reasons why the Doctor couldn't not be from Gallifrey. Like I mean, like suddenly being from somewhere else, it puts the Who back in Doctor Who, right? We genuinely don't know where the Doctor's from now. So it's more Doctor Who than it's been in a while.
Did they need to put more Who in Doctor Who though? That's, I think, one of the big things.
I think Chibnall went a bit far with making the Doctor create the whole Time Lords thing. But I don't think, like I said, I think it's always important to keep the show shocking and interesting. The Doctor isn't the. I would have loved for Chibnall to have not done that whole storyline completely, but with the Doctor being not really from Gallifrey, I think that would have been interesting, because going forward the Doctor would be searching for her real home and trying to find out where she really came from. And that's something that a lot of people can really relate to, especially people in care, especially people who have never really known their real families, and trying to, some people would try and track those down. Like it's like a piece of yourself in there. Neither of us have a dad, or well, neither of us know our dads. So I felt a bit of a kinship with the Doctor for the first time. I've loved the Doctor and I've been entertained by the Doctor and enthralled by what the Doctor's done, but I've never felt related to the Doctor. I've never felt that the character's relatable, that I could empathise with that character very much, but this time I felt like I could. The idea that the Doctor wasn't, that half of her life isn't known to even herself. So I liked that concept, that idea. I thought was an incredible idea, and really gave the Doctor something to strive for going forward, to find her real home. But the rest of it just kind of made Chibnall shoot himself in the foot, really.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of, I wouldn't say I kind of have mellowed on the idea a little bit. By the way, fun fact: me and James have more in common than you think. We both hate our dads. We've both never met our dads. We both have mothers called Sue. We were both born in February, and we both have this. We both have this. Yeah, 2 days apart, and we both have the same middle name. Just thought I'd just let the subscribers know that.
Yep, Anthony. Both called Anthony.
Just thought I'd share that with you, because how weird is that?
Yeah, I can't remember at all if we've all mentioned that before.
No, but there you go. Still learning about us even now.
I can't remember if that's at all been brought up. Yeah. But yes, there's a little trivia for you guys. It's only taken nearly 10 years, but you finally know more about us.
Exactly. Continuing on from your point, though, I think that's a big point you made there about the Doctor now not having a home. I don't mind so much that the William Hartnell's there's no longer the first Doctor. I've never understood why so many people were so annoyed by that. They're disrespectful to Hartnell or anything like that. I still think his legacy is more than solid and respected, and I've never understood that. And I thought the addition of the fugitive Doctor was fantastic. I think Joe Martin was absolutely amazing. And even the idea of the division has grown on me. The Doctor having this past, life fighting for the division, going on missions. I think Big Finish must have been absolutely rubbing their hands together when they saw that. Think of the audio stories we could do. I don't think the idea of the timeless child is a bad idea. That the Time Lord race came from this child who was found and experimented on and repeatedly murdered in order to get the ability of regeneration, and that's where the Time Lords came from. I think the idea of the Timeless Child's actually quite a great one. I think it would have been a great addition to Time Lord mythology, Gallifreyan mythology. It's the fact it's the Doctor that I really, really don't like. You know, even the fact that the Doctor's not from Gallifrey isn't the worst thing. I think looking back, I will look upon certain stories when the Doctor's talking, you know, Utopia, for example. No, Sound of Drums, when the Doctor sits Martha and Jack down and they're all sharing chips and the Doctor's sat there reminiscing about Gallifrey and his home. And for the first time we saw it, I think, in the modern era. Scenes like that I will look back on now and go, but no. You know, even the Day of the Doctor, when the Doctors all come together to save Gallifrey, you know, that's not their home anymore. There's still going to be plenty of things I look back on and go, but that doesn't carry the same weight that it used to. But the Doctor being the Timeless Child and being the one who is responsible for regeneration, responsible for being, I guess, the being that gave the Time Lords this incredible ability that made them this immortal, huge presence in the universe, just doesn't sit right with me at all. I think, you know, for one, what I see, and maybe it's what your perception of the Doctor as a character is, but my perception of the Doctor is that it's a character who is the underdog, a character who is resourceful, knowledgeable, doesn't use weapons, doesn't use power, doesn't have an army, doesn't have countless superpowers. You know, the Doctor's not a superhero, doesn't have any, you know, superpowers at their disposal. The Doctor is a clever, resourceful underdog who defies the odds, looks after the little man, and is not extraordinary. The Doctor, considering they come from a race like the Time Lords, they are ordinary. And it's never been the Doctor and where they come from that's made them special. It's always been what the Doctor has done that's made them special. How they've saved the world, the people they've saved, the planets they've rescued, you know, how they've come from this underdog position to defy the odds and defeat the baddies. You know, it's not the Doctor's origins that make the character special. It's what they've done. It's what they stand for. And I feel like making the Doctor this huge, super powerful alien child that can also regenerate. And I know people will say, you know, well, you know, Tectayun made it so that the Time Lords had a limit of 12 regenerations. They never specified that she did that for the Doctor. So we are to presume that the Doctor also has unlimited regenerations, which, you know, you look at the Deadly Assassin, you look at Time of the Doctor should not be this immortal being who can regenerate as much as she likes. That takes away the vulnerability of the character. And, you know, when your main hero is immortal, that takes away such a huge characteristic. It's like Superman. I don't like Superman because he's near enough immortal other than kryptonite. You know, the Doctor should not be this powerful and this undefeatable and this immortal. It just isn't. It's not what the character of the Doctor should be. The Doctor is not significant and special. It's not because of who she is or where she's come from. It's because of what she's done. And I feel like the Doctor is no longer this rebel outcast dropout who wanted to be different from the Time Lords. The Doctor is now their god. And I don't know if Chibnall was trying to do this to you know, stamp his authority and stamp, you know, his name on the show to say, this is what I've done. And I will always be remembered for doing this. But for me, the whole idea that the Doctor was the origin of the Time Lords and was repeatedly murdered in order to get the idea of regeneration, I think it's not canon destroying, but it's very, very close to destroying the Doctor's mythology and origin, and it's not what the character's about for me. It's just not. I think if they could have used the Timeless Child to enhance the Master's character, to introduce a brand new founding father, they could have even brought in a brand new Time Lord. Imagine how cool it would have been if the Timeless Child was this brand new Time Lord character who just rocked up, and suddenly the Doctor's got this almighty being to face who created the Time Lords. I mean, it's the daddy of all Time Lords, bigger than Rassilon, bigger than Omega. They could have created such a great Time Lord character from it. I think it being the Doctor was a real cop-out. And
it's weird. It's weird. I was just actually about to ask you there, would you have been more on board with the storyline if the Doctor wasn't the Timeless Child? Like
100%.
Like imagine just the like the psychological, effects from, having to face off against, a Time Lord that's an enemy and is the Timeless Child, but also having to deal with the fact that the Doctor came from a society of people that were that she herself was born out of a race that tortured an innocent child.
Exactly. That was enough, right? That was enough.
Yeah. So I've got to admit, like there were other avenues that could have made the Timeless Child storyline so much still just as equally interesting and psychologically tormenting for the Doctor as well. So there's even more reason for the Doctor to hate the Time Lords. The Doctor already kind of hated them anyway, but never like full on hated them. It's like when you find your parents annoying. You find them a little bit annoying, but you don't want them to come to any harm or anything. But if the Doctor were to know that her race of people basically did something really horrible, I think that would have done something wonders for the show. I think. So I do think that there were other avenues to go down. Just Chibnall chose the wrong one.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about putting the Who in Doctor Who, and I don't think, if you want to add an extra layer to the show, an extra layer to the Doctor, you don't have to rip up the origin and rewrite it. I honestly feel like if the Doctor still remained a Time Lord, she still, like you say, was an outcast, ran away because she hated her own people, and obviously there's so much backstory with the Time Lords, with Rassilon and what happened at the end of time and the Time War. How the Doctor is horribly in love with her home Gallifrey. She's always wanting to find it and save it, but she hates the people who inhabit it. They don't have to make the Doctor this almighty godlike being to put the Who in Doctor Who. They could have literally just been like, right, the Timeless Child is this amazing, evil, unbelievably powerful Time Lord. We already thought the Time Lords were the ultimate power. Imagine something even greater than Omega, greater than Rassilon, something that's top of the lot. And this is where, the Doctor, the Doctor still came from this horrible idea that, regeneration came from a kid getting murdered over and over. That's embedded in all the Time Lords. That's awful. That could still stand, just not from the Doctor. The Doctor could still have found out that her race came from this innocent child who was murdered, and the regeneration was forced into the Time Lords. And this is where, the Master could still have said, Doctor, this is where you come from. She just didn't have to be the flipping epicenter of it. And I think that would have still added an extra layer of the Doctor thinking, no matter how good I am, I've got this inside me, this power of regeneration, this gift that we've got to continue living and effectively defeat death. It's a gift, but it's a gift that came from this horrible origin story, this timeless child, this evil being. It just didn't have to be the Doctor. I think literally the idea is so good. 95% of it is so good. If it just wasn't the flipping Doctor, I think they could have created a new character from it. It would have, it wouldn't have damaged the Doctor's origin. They still could have even written in the Fugitive and the Division in there as well. And I think the big thing is, this is the biggest thing for me, dude, actually. It's not what the Timeless Child is. You mentioned earlier, that it's opened up this whole new avenue that the Doctor could now discover her origin and discover where she's from. But I think the big disappointment is that I don't think they are. I think if Chibnall, he's opened this can of worms, he's created this big story arc, but you either have to go all in and explore it and give us some kind of answer, or you just retcon it and leave it. And I feel like he's left it hanging, and I don't think it's going to get picked up again. I think that's the worst thing. He's
well. I mean, are you really all
going to get these answers? Is it just going to be left?
I mean, are you really all that shocked that he never went anywhere else with the Timeless Child storyline and never really went all the way with it?
I just don't see what the point of the Doctor being the Timeless Child is then. You know,
the internet, the fandom, seemingly as a whole, had all collectively lost their shit, right? Had collectively lost their shit and just basically unequivocally said, no, we do not like this. Or we do not like, this version of this story where the Doctor is the epicenter of Time Lord life as we know it. And, so that, so obviously Chibnall was like, oh crap, right, okay. No one liked what I did then. Okay, so I guess I'd better just wrap it up then, and well, I can't. The episode's aired now. It's done. People have seen it. I can't do anything about it. So I guess I better just, go on with something else. And just
that's what he did.
Not really mention it.
Do you think he drew a line under it because he was a bit like, oh,
yeah?
It wasn't even mentioned in the regen, was it?
Yeah,
like 13's regen.
Yeah, yeah. But perhaps it was. Perhaps Chibnall just kind of U-turned on his own, decision, did a full Liz Truss and just U-turned on their whole thing. See, the Who addicts can be political as well, not just
British politics.
Yeah. The Who addicts at the Houses of Parliament. Can you imagine?
We'd sort this country out.
We really would. Either that or ruin it worse than Liz
Truss. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because I'm not exactly great with my finances either. But the thing, so yeah, I think that Chibnall did just kind of do a full 360 and just kind of went in a different direction with how he was going to continue with his run because he was influenced by maybe the opinions that fans had that they weren't a fan of that idea. But even then, I suppose he could have easily went, okay, I can still do the Timeless Child thing. I can just maybe say that the Master was being, his typical evil self and lied. The Timeless Child isn't the Doctor, it's somebody else. So I don't know. The Timeless Child storyline could have still worked. He could have found some way into, doing the same storyline just better, and he could have easily just said the Master lied, and was just trying to, torture the Doctor, and stuff, and just say, the Master was lying, the Timeless Child is out there somewhere, the Doctor's got to find them, so, that could have also worked.
Yeah, I think that's the worst thing. I mean, he did touch upon it in Flux as well, so he didn't just drop it straight after Series 12. He obviously Tectaion rocked up in Flux. But I think it's the way that the Doctor just dropped her memories in the fob watch. She spent all that time getting hold of this fob watch only to drop it into the TARDIS. And I feel like that was a metaphor for Chibnall dropping the story arc. I think he was like, so I've opened this can of worms, I've rewritten the Doctor's origin, but I can't exactly go into more detail on where she come from or what she was, because then that answers the question, Doctor Who. So he's kind of tried to add to the question, but then he doesn't want to answer the question, so he's sort of caught in between. And I feel like that's where a lot of the fans are sort of dissatisfied. I think even fans of the Timeless Child are a bit like, well, we wanted more. We wanted at least a kind of conclusion. And fans who didn't like it were sort of like, well, you've just introduced it and then left it. You've left this wreckage behind and not tried to do anything with it. So I think the worst thing is probably that the fact that this meteorite's been dropped in the Doctor Who lore and nothing's going to get done with it. Because I don't know what you think, but I don't think Russell's going to pick this up. I think Russell's probably going to look at it and go, you know what? I don't need this. I don't need to touch this. He probably looks at the Timeless Child like this. It's this radioactive substance, and he's like, yeah, I don't need to touch that shit. I'm not going anywhere near it. No, I'm not bringing that controversy into my Who. So I don't think we'll hear of it again, which I think's probably the worst thing.
Yeah. I think I'm just kind of shocked at how much you've softened on it and how much I've kind of half changed my mind on it. I really built this up in my mind that you and me were kind of going to butt heads quite a bit, but we really haven't. even when I think we're going to argue, we don't.
On to Flux!
Onto Flux.
I
Right.
thought
So,
it was rubbish.
considering we are, a good while into it, I will try and, make my opinions very short on this. I think Flux, I think that it had more memorable episodes than Series 12, and certainly more than Series 11 before it. But I think that might be down to the shortened episode run. I think it might have been down to that there were less episodes. And I just wish Chibnall would have done that all along. I feel like Chibnall was more comfortable with this series structure. One storyline, so he only really needed to focus on one thing at a time. That his vision was always just on one thing and wasn't distracted by all sorts of other things. So, I do kind of, think that Flux was a better fit for him. I wish he'd have either lessened the amount of episodes more, throughout his whole run. I feel like it might have worked a bit better than that. Maybe we might actually find more of the episodes memorable. I mean, hell, I can't even remember a great deal of the episodes from Series 11 and 12. Like, a lot of them have left my head. But Flux, I remember them more, So, I feel like less episodes might have meant more of a memorable series. I don't know. What do you think?
I think we might disagree on Flux more than The Timeless Child, because
Wow.
when I say that I can't decide what I prefer when it comes to Series 11 and Series 12, because they're so different, Flux is at the bottom for me.
Okay.
And I don't know if this is because of the fact that I hadn't seen it, and I obviously rewatched the whole era and then rewatched Flux after. So I literally rewatched the whole era in time. And I don't know if it's because by the time I got to Flux and I'd watched so much of the Chibnall era, one after the other, back to back, it got to Flux and I was exhausted by that point. I'd gotten to watching Flux and I was at exactly the same point with that era. Even on a rewatch that literally took me 10 days, I was in exactly the same position as I was in real life when there was a year gap between series. I got to Flux and I was struggling to remain interested in in everything. The 13th Doctor. Yaz had been around forever and not really done much. So I was like, Dan was a breath of fresh air. So I was like, maybe this will be something, that might spike my interest. But he didn't. I thought he was pretty average. And Flux was the worst part about Flux.
So the whole end of the universe thing wasn't to your liking?
I think apparently it was meant to be 10 episodes, but COVID dropped it to 6. And maybe if that's true, this could have been a lot better, spread out over more episodes. Maybe there would have been more time for the episodes to breathe, more time for things to be explained a bit more, give the characters more time to actually have moments to themselves and just for the whole thing to breathe. But I felt like it was just 100 miles an hour from start to finish, and to fit all that into 6 episodes was too much. I felt like it was too convoluted. I thought it was too ambitious for 6 episodes. I thought because there was so much going on, and they were trying to do so much, every episode they were trying to carry on the Flux storyline, but also have their own individual story at the same time, like the Centauran War as well as Flux, the Village of the Angels and Flux. They obviously had Swarm and Azure and Flux throughout the whole thing. Too much going on. And I found it, maybe, like I say, it was because I'd watched so much Chibnall Who up to that point. Maybe I needed a break before going into Flux. Maybe I just had too much Doctor Who. But yeah, Flux for me was unwatchable. I really found it so hard to follow. I thought Once Upon a Time was probably one of the most unwatchable, jarring episodes I've ever seen. It was an absolute mess, and I think when it got to the end, it was wrapped up and it was so rushed and messy and all over the shop, and I was at such a point where I was just so done with it. I just wanted it over and I had no interest, so I was really just not enjoying it towards the end. I thought, they're trying to introduce Vinda and Belle and Carvanista, and Dan's been dropped in and he's got this love interest with Diane, which barely gets mentioned, and the Doctor and Yaz are suddenly, getting, too much, man. Too much going on at once. It didn't have enough chance to breathe. I think there probably was a good idea in there, but when I was watching War of the Centaurans, I was enjoying it. I was enjoying the Centauran stuff in the Crimean War, but every time the Flux thing would pop up, I'd be like, I'm not interested. Go away. I want to watch this. I don't care about the Flux. Yeah. And in Village of the Angels, love the Angel stuff. I want to clarify. I thought it was an incredible Angel episode. Loved it.
The Doctor transforming into an angel is seared into my brain.
Exactly. But the Flux stuff was just in the way. I was like, no, go. I don't want that. I want the angels. So it was kind of an inconvenience in its own series. And it was just too much of a mess for me. I just couldn't follow it. Had no interest. It was an absolute mess. And out of the three, it's the one I would definitely not go back to rewatch. So yeah. Didn't like it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean that's totally fine, man. I mean, it's I think that out of all the series that fans had less to say about, or had less hateful things to say about, should I say? I guess I just noticed it. I noticed that people were saying less hateful crap about Flux than any of the previous series, it seemed. So I guess I was just kind of liking that it was a series that, okay, maybe no one was talking about it. Maybe that was a bad thing too, that no one was talking about it. But, I guess I was just kind of pleased that, after the absolute divisive, nightmare that the Timeless Children left us in, I kind of just felt like, Flux was, after,
refreshing.
After what we'd went through with COVID and everything, it felt like just a bit of sci-fi fun for me, with some really formidable, downright evil and scary looking villains.
Swarm and Azure looked amazing, by the way.
Oh yeah, they looked frightening. Absolutely. They look like they'd haunt your nightmares.
Absolutely.
They looked like a chandelier that had gained consciousness and went to Chernobyl for a week. Like it just they looked awful. And so there's a lot of memorable moments in Flux as well. So I think for me, I was just kind of, after the year that I'd had, I think I was just liking science fiction, kind of, science fiction fun. I was looking forward to a bit of science fiction drama as well. I think that's just basically what I got out of Flux. It gave me what I wanted at the time.
I can completely see why people would, like I say, maybe if I'd have watched it in line with everyone else and I'd had that break from Series 12 and I could watch one episode a week instead of watching them back to back, it probably would have been a better experience. I think I may need to rewatch it because, like I say, jumping straight into Flux following Series 12 and then watching all 6 Flux episodes back to back probably wasn't the best idea because I was trying to consume so much information and with no real break to sort of let it sink in. It just made it very unenjoyable and messy for me. So I think maybe a different perspective's needed on that. But like I said, there were some great moments. I think Swarm and Azure were fantastic. I loved the Angel episode. I loved the Centauran episode. I think it's probably the best the Centaurans have looked in the modern era, and maybe the best the Angels have looked, barring Blink. So I think, like I say, them 2 episodes on their own are absolutely amazing. If you take Flux out of them, they're probably 2 of my favourite episodes of the whole era. But the whole Flux storyline, it just seemed to get in the way, and I wasn't, I felt like it was more intruding in the episodes than anything, and the whole thing of it destroying everything in the universe has just sort of also been dropped. We talked about Chibnall not really carrying through the Timeless Child. I still don't know how we have anything other than Earth in, Time of the Doctor, Power of the Doctor. How do we have a sun? How does the Earth even exist? What's it rotating around? Where does the light come from? There's no sun, there's no moon. How is the Earth even a thing? How is it warm?
Yeah.
How is everyone not dead when the Flux has destroyed everything else? I feel like that has to be answered.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it was Chibnall's way of just saying, look, for the whole time I've been doing this, you've been complaining about every single thing that I've ever done. So, do you guys really actually care if I even bring up what I did the last series before? Do any of you really care? You'd complain if I probably did. Okay, right, bye. I'm going out the door. So like maybe towards the end he just really didn't care. Like he wrote basically a nostalgic fan fiction. Some could argue, that he kind of did a whole nostalgia trip for us, so that he didn't leave a bad taste in fans' mouths entirely. So I don't know. Maybe Flux was just kind of him kind of winding down a bit and was like you know what, this is like really taking it out of me. So maybe this was just him kind of giving up. I mean, later on when he was sort of not mentioning the universe coming to an end, and half of the universe being gone. In the future specials, none of that really being mentioned. So I guess that might have been the case. I don't know. Just speculative at this point.
Yeah, I think if it had been written over 10 episodes as well, it would have been a different series. I think you give the characters a chance to breathe. You give Belle and Vinda more time. You give John Bishop's. You give Dan more time to actually have a character, not just be comic relief. Carvanista more time with his people. You have more episodes that just have. I feel like Once Upon a Time was trying to do, in one episode it was trying to do the job of like 5 episodes. In one, it was mental, and the finale as well could have been a 2-3 parter. I mean, it was just crazy, and I think Chibnall wanted to stick to the story of Flux, but within writing it in 6 episodes was ambitious and was just too much to do in too little time. So I think, I'm not going to bash it too much because I'm grateful we got it at the end of the day with COVID and everything. So I think with Flux, I currently stand with it being my least favourite. It needs a rewatch. Maybe understanding it a lot more will make it an easier rewatch. And obviously the circumstances at the time probably didn't help with COVID and stuff. Obviously, we've touched upon the final couple of specials. We both thought Eve of the Daleks was great. We both thought Legend of the Sea Devils was shit. I'm sure I heard somewhere that Chibnall didn't even want to write that episode, but the BBC were pushing on commissioning an extra episode, hence why the editing and everything just didn't seem quite right. I don't know how true that is.
Yeah.
And we've obviously mentioned Power of the Doctor as well. We've done a full review on that.
So. I mean, that makes it even more insulting if that's the case. Chibnall didn't even want to write it, but the BBC was like, no, we need to fit in a Doctor Who episode in here. And it feels even more like, I'll just write about the Sea Devils. The Sea Devils are worth more than just,
I was waiting for you to.
Than just, the Sea Devils deserve more than just something to fit into a BBC schedule. Just like it. I don't know. If you want just some little filler special episode, to fit in between your New Year's special and Jodie Swan song, yeah, just like I don't know, write one of your shitty new villains, just I don't know, bring in the Pating or whatever at this point. I don't really care.
Legend of the Pating.
Yeah, Legends of the Pating. What legend? It's more like it's more like ugh of the Pating. I wished he hadn't used the Sea Devils for an episode he didn't even want to write. That is just if that's the case. I just oh god, I wish he hadn't used the Sea Devils for an episode he didn't even want.
That was the after all them decades, that will be known as the story that the Sea Devils returned.
And I might not even get another one. Again. I really might not get one.
You've let me have my word on the Timeless Child. You had to have your moment with Legend of the Sea. I know it's a good job we got Power of the Doctor, isn't it? And that it never ended on Legend of the Sea. Imagine if that was it. I mean, imagine if that was how it all ended.
I'd have been like Chibnall, come on. I've been one of the few that's actually been in your corner, man. You give me this shit? Come on. You know, I just, oh, God, like, like, if that was the end, if that was it, I'd have been agreeing with you more than you'd think. Oh, God.
Well, shall we wrap this one up?
I think we should. Nearly 2 hours.
So,
I think we should.
We've done it. We've done the Who Addicts Star. To be fair, let's be fair. We are trying to do 3 series reviews and basically catch up on 5 years of Doctor Who that we've not spoken about together. We're trying to do this in 2 hours. I mean, like, let's cut some slack, guys. You know what we're like. But 5 years of Who here, we're trying to wrap up in one pod.
Yeah, exactly. So give us a bit of leeway here, guys. But yeah, I think it's great that now we can now exhale a bit and be like, right, okay, like we can draw a line under the Chibnall era for better or worse, and just move forward with Doctor Who, even though we've got a Doctor we've had before, a head writer we've had before, a logo we've had before.
That's for no.
Sorry.
Oh, now that is a discussion for another day. So
it is. I'm not getting into that.
Dude, this is it. We are drawing a line under the Chibnall era. This is your moment to finally say your final bit and draw a line under it. So sum up the Chibnall era for you for good. The Doctor, the companions, the series, Chibnall. Just this is where you draw a line under the era, and this will be the period. This is what James will. On your tombstone. This is what will be. This is what James Wilson, and I can't wait to see that tombstone. This is what James Wilson thought of the Chibnall era.
For one, Matthew. For one, I'm getting cremated, right? As Thanos intended. Okay. When he snaps me out of existence, I will turn to ash and nothing. Okay, that's what I intend to do.
I'll take that.
So that let's get that over and done with for a start. Okay. But okay, so seriously, the Chibnall era, I have felt like we have been seeing a man run Doctor Who didn't even want to run Doctor Who in the first place. As we've seen was reported before, and I'd only really realised this before we started recording, was that Moffat was the one who came round to Chibnall's house, or it might be the other way around, I don't know. Chibnall came around to Moffat's house for a few drinks, glass of wine or whatever. And as we all know, we make stupid decisions that we don't even want to make when we're drunk. This is one of them. So I think maybe Chibnall running Doctor Who was something he didn't even want to do. So I think he was just trying to. He was cornered into a position where maybe the BBC has actually, since Moffat left, been struggling for someone that wants to run Doctor Who. So maybe since Moffat left, the BBC's been struggling with whoever, because normally that would be the BBC's decision to hire someone to run Doctor Who, but everyone kind of made it seem like that was Moffat's decision, So that's kind of what I would say, drawing a line under Chibnall, is that I think what we've been seeing for the last 5 years is a man that did his best with a show that he didn't even want to head right at all.
Might explain the marketing, the lack of marketing, and I mean already Russell T. And we'll do a podcast on RTD and Tutti and everything, but there already seems to be more. I don't know. RTD seems to be pumping more passion and love and drive into Doctor Who. I mean, the DWM, shout out to the Geeks Handbag, by the way, one of the greatest guys in the whole of the planet. He actually told me the other day that in the Geordie era, in the Chibnall era, they'd stopped adding comics to the DWM. And the first thing RTD has done is reinstated the comics back into DWM. That DWM
Brilliant.
is sold out. We've already got Ncuti on talk shows in America. The Disney deal as well is massive. I just feel like Chibnall was doing it maybe more because it was his job, not because he... I don't want to speak for him, but yeah, it just feels like there's just more of a drive behind it under RTD, and I can see what you mean. I mean, for me, it's an era that just never got going for me. And I think when it did, it was just a little bit too late. There was never enough to hook me in the early days. Series 11 didn't really do much to bring me in and keep me there. Series 12 was very stop-starty. The Time as Child thing didn't help. The fandom at that point made it very difficult, and it made you just want to step away. Regardless of liking or disliking the show at that point, you just wanted to just get out and just step away from it, to the point to which I just wasn't even here for Flux. So it's just tailed off and unraveled, and it's had its good moments. It's had some very memorable moments, but it's also had its very low points and some very poor episodes. It's certainly changed Doctor Who. I will give it that. For better or for worse, who knows? I think 13 again was a Doctor Who for me just wasn't layered enough. Like the era, she very much had moments, but was never consistent throughout in terms of her character. Her morals would change. Some of the decisions she made, some of the things she did didn't make any sense. And I will say I got into her Doctor at the very end. I thought Power of the Doctor, she was incredible, and I thought she was fantastic. She felt more natural. And one thing I would say is I don't think the character of the Doctor ever felt natural to Jodie. I don't know what it is. It's just the dialogue, the exposition. It just felt like her Doctor was more of a script in human form that was just throwing out words that didn't really mean anything. She was saying a lot, but not really. It didn't really have much substance to what she was saying. Her Doctor was just very one-dimensional and one-note and rambly, and she was just spouting out words that weren't really saying much. The companions didn't really go anywhere either, didn't have much to their characters. And overall, it's just an era that just never really got... It just wasn't for me. That's the only way I can sum it up. So,
yeah.
It is what it is. I'm glad we can draw a line under it, and I am very excited for what's to come, which I'm sure we will discuss a lot.
Indeed. So, and exhale. Does it feel good, Matthew? Does it feel good?
It does. I feel it. I feel the weight has lifted out,
Yeah, so do I. I feel more at peace with the universe, or what's left of it, according to Flux.
Yeah. Because we've been branded as a channel that hate Chibnall and hate Chibnall's era, which has never been the case. It's just
the internet tends to the internet tends to over accentuate things and make things seem worse than they actually are, which I think is also the internet in a nutshell, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we're not on one side or the other. We're in the middle, as we always have been.
Indeed. Well, there you go. I suppose we'll just be able to wrap this up now. I don't know when the next time we'll see you. We haven't really discussed what the next podcast will be. Matthew has released a spin-offs video, which I haven't had the chance to listen to watch yet. But I will get round to. I will get round to doing that probably when I'm on break at work. Yeah, I know. It's because I just hate you, Matthew. I really, really hate looking at your face. So,
I hate you too.
The fact that I've been able to do this for 2 hours nearly without vomiting is It's
a testament. I feel exactly the same.
I feel bad for people that actually come into this review at this point.
Alex really hate each other, don't they? Yeah,
they really do hate each other. Why are they? It's called banter, ladies and gentlemen. Banter.
Now there's a screenshot I'm using in future. That was beautiful.
Indeed, yes. Use that. Put that on the Twitter sphere. To sort of be like, right, this overview's been filmed and all that.
Exactly.
But yes, Matthew's got a spin-off video that's out now, and I have shot a video talking about the excitingness of the Disney Plus deal and the the bigger budget that it will be going forward. So
that will have already come out. That will have already come out.
Wibbly wobbly. Yes, it will have already came out. Yes,
wibbly wobbly.
Yes, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, all that. So yes, so those solo videos will be out, and so yeah. Until then, see you next time when you'll next be seeing our ugly mugs.
Yes, like we say, we will do these as often as we can when we make time to. Stay on the socials to keep updated on what we're doing and when. Obviously, we're both going to be chucking out solo videos plenty in the time between podcasts. So all of the socials are below James's big round head, and all of the podcast providers to which you can find us are below my also very big round head. So check us out on any of them. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, obviously, as always, if you want to support us here on YouTube, but you can, of course, subscribe to us on all the podcast providers. Leave us a review on the podcast providers as well. I've not actually pushed that, but you can leave us reviews on there as well, which is nice, isn't it?
Oh, and also, with, there being a lot of space between now and the next episode of Doctor Who, pretty much a whole blooming year, feel free to, on Twitter or whatever, Instagram, whatever you like, on the Who Addicts socials, just, if you want to suggest a video, I don't see a problem. Why not? There's going to be a lot of downtime between now and then. So, any subjects that you guys have been wondering about, please do let us know on the socials.
Yeah, I would like us to do podcasts, like funner podcasts, like series rankings or doctor rankings or stuff that. Yeah, stuff like that would be fun. But we've got all year to do that next year, so we'll get around to that.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of exciting stuff coming next year, with that being the 10th year of the Who Addicts.
We're turning 10.
Returning 10.
We're about to hit puberty. It's exciting.
Yeah. Well, 10, is that the age, is it? I thought it was like 12 or 13 or something. But anyway, I don't know. We're just about at the right age where the Who Addicts can go to prison. I think, I think 10 years old is when you're of the legal age where you can go to jail. So the Who Addicts better be a good boy, because I don't know. I've lost the analogy.
And on that note, guys,
I'm tired.
James needs to go to bed. He's up very early in the morning.
I've got to be up at 4 o'clock. So
thank you for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.
See ya.